everybody. Welcome to Poetry at the Albany Library. This is our season opener, and I'm very happy to see all of you. We really have a special reading here tonight. 3 poets who have been colleagues and friends, and their enthusiasm about reading with each other has matched my own at reading their work. I wanted to say something briefly first, and this is really a wonderful, delightful showing of people here. I know that there were people who were torn tonight between 2 readings because a poet who was very well regarded and very much loved and a young poet, so just beginning to really show what she could do and bring, and under extraordinary conditions really started to give people who were able to read it in that way insight into, you know, the essential human condition of mortality and of life and of what one does with this life and what one does when one's experience in the body is challenged by circumstances. The sense of the integrity of the body is somehow, where, you know, the body is in the world, and when that is in question, the kinds of things that come up, which I'm not saying nearly eloquently enough. There's no way. So there is a memorial reading going on at the university at the same time. This poet's name is Hilary Gravendike, and she 5 years ago had a double lung transplant and has died at the age of 35 in May. She was just much beloved by her students at Pomona. She recently had a new book out by Akron Press called Harm, in which she just does a remarkable piece of work of telling about that liminal space kind of between life and death and living with this, and experiences that few live to tell or would be able to communicate in such a way. And I wanted to read one poem here from that book, and then we will move on to our evening. It is called Safekeeping, and it is from the book Harm. These were our secrets, samples from a charred heart, beak ligament, sharp fist of serpentine. We traded our phosphorus and filament for a 10-pick lock and were comforted. We knew that the right chemicals could make anything glow, knew that our discoveries were too delicate for exposure, and how distant, how troubling outside our rare cabinets. A little more protection, and another specimen, clinging ring of iris, breath bottle, bone, or scab. It was dangerous, but it was ours for safekeeping. We wanted something coarser than blood to course through us. Bee swarm and fiberglass wanted to glitter and wound and at the same time. So I just wanted to remember her here as well. And tonight we have 3 fabulous poets, and as I said, each has introduced me to the other, which is quite wonderful. I'm going to start with Corey Van Landingham, who is currently a Stegner Fellow at Stanford University. Her first book, Antidote, has just received fabulous reviews, and all three of these poets have worked. Their work speaks to the environment, the sense of person in place, and what Corey does is quite unique and has been called even startling by Marianne Baruch, and I hope that I'm pronouncing her name correctly. The Corey's poems have appeared or are forthcoming in the Best American Poetry 2014, Best New Poets of 2012, Kenyon Review, Southern Review. So this first prize winning, the Charles B. Wheeler Prize, the Ohio State University Press, the Journal Award, Antidote, came out in 2013, and she is already well on her way with a second collection of poems that she describes as approaching drones through the guise of love letters in which violence, longing, and desire are questioned in terms of proximity. So I'm very happy to introduce Corey Van Landingham.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm thrilled to be here, especially with my friends Emilia and Keith, who are not only wonderful people, but wonderful poets, as you will see. So I'm going to read 6 poems, 4 from Antidote, my first book, and then 2 newer ones. Elegy in which I refuse to turn away. Hospice recommended we starve him. I did. I can sleep all day. Things happen and my father dies. I go to Italy. I fall apart under Tintoretto, those smudgy crucifixions. In another life, I am promised to a lawyer. I have a wedding chest heavy with linens. When I wake in a small boat filling with ocean, my father sews the white dress into my skin. I'm given medicine to help me sleep. People are hired to stand around my bed and hold my wrists down while I writhe. This isn't what I imagined, but isn't necessarily worse. The wedding plate shatters. My once beloved reads me my Miranda rights. Owls keep crashing into the bedroom window midday, and I'm not allowed to touch them, am made to kneel at a safe distance. My father always makes me turn away while he snaps the owl's neck. He is saving it. I know this from something worse. But I have the right to see what happens to their yellow eyes. Do they stay open? Does he stroke their wings to calm them down until in his hands they go slack? Anything I say can and will be used against me in the middle of the night. Boat I dream fills with talons. I have the right to use them how I want. This next poem has the word coma in it, K-O-M-A, and Sappho used that. It means kind of like a deep sexual stupor, and our word coma comes from that. There's also an epigraph. Most lice are specialists feeding on a single species to whose fur or feathers their claws are adapted. Oh, and there's also one line from Sappho. It will just be the most vitriolic line in the poem. The louse. You'll find a louse opening itself to the procedure of flight, which must be sublime in its wingless mechanics, its featherlock, upsweep, unhooked from the earth. Yes, Sappho, things have turned out badly for us. I name every injury like it was a comet. There are ghosts that swim through me, and I cannot drown them. So still we are left here, parsing beauty. The thin, rib-like structures of the louse, the piece of stone imprinted with its lost armor. When we split from ape, the louse followed, loyal to its host, duly splitting itself. I simply want to be dead, in two to follow new form, new being. And the creature with its specialized claws held fast to the bird as if they were made for each other, as if what does not let go in the air is something worth keeping. These small monsters, they will not save you, Sappho. They will not undo the coma beauty through you, the trance beauty threw you into. I stole the title of this poem from Chris Isaak. This world is only going to break your heart. Space has been shut off for summer, etc. In the last shuttle launched, I am told to love a piece of earth, then metal, then the optics behind the things I hold in my hand. I am told, be simple. Only love what you can bear to break in half. Paintings I once owned adhere to the ceiling so that I walk under ponds with lily pads like drowned hats. I don't often feel like walking, having heard the announcement that I am stuck out here with decisions to make. What graffiti will be unbirthed? Which hills will turn white with bones, pathogens? When I flinch into an unimpressive sleep, I will dislodge some unimpressive planet with a terrain that shakes under a red sky like a syphilitic man. I try not to sleep. There is day, then there is later day. Sure, there are things that I miss. Tornadoes, the idea of brothers, distinguished dogs with cauldrons of summer saliva. Once I even felt holy. It was at the throes of an orange tree. I could have been stoned to death and still would have sung out, "Tongue, barren tongue." There are ghosts up here, but they were shut off long ago when I tried to put my arms around them and was told I'd have to choose between the slaughterhouse and the morgue. I retaliated with apathy. I cut off my ears. Eclogue. Tonight, you are taping X-rays to the lamp, projecting your disease onto the living room so that the bladder drapes an accent wall. Dark growth turns moss touching down on top of the piano. You mentioned the single deer outside the window, how winter's blue light fashions a basin from his sunken rib cage. Photographer, your slideshow is not enough to interrupt the wildlife. Put on your coat. When the snow melts, you will be trackless and waning. Even the early star is only half wild above the junipers, because wild is a process that has to be learned. And I'll end with two more newer poems from my manuscript Autoerotic, which is largely about drones, other things, but a lot about that. And this first one addresses both Rilke's archaic torso of Apollo, but mainly Nike alighting on a worship. And if you haven't seen that statue, it's this very large statue of the goddess Nike, goddess of victory, but she doesn't have a head. And so, yeah. Love letter to Nike alighting on a worship. I could not know how like the drone you would become, standing below your grandeur in 2008 at the Louvre. Eyeless, mouthless, good girl, broken goddess. You were still, the woman commemorating a man's war. All breast to mark man's arete, Hellenistic in a fierce headwind, drama and theater. You, sentinel, see all. Here, wrote Rilke, there is no place that does not see you. Funny how Apollo, god of truth and light, becomes your brother without a head. Poetry and war speechless. The world, Dickinson in a letter, is sleeping in ignorance and error. At night, now, the unmanned machines still have to, somewhere, touch down. Grounded, men stroke them with their own hands. Stand back, a docent warned me then. You're getting, he said, too close to her. And this last one's called Love Letter to the President, and I thought I'd read it because it's Otis Redding's birthday and it mentions him in this. Happy birthday, Otis. And it has an epigraph. The Senate has quietly stripped a provision from an intelligence bill that would have required President Obama to make public each year the number of people killed or injured in targeted killing operations in Pakistan and other countries where the United States uses lethal force. From the New York Times. Love Letter to the President. Dear Sir, in youth I collected names of the boys I did what with in a list numbered down sheaths of ripped out notebook paper. That same year I had to memorize the names and dates of all the presidents of the United States. The computer found each headshot so I could picture them alive and arrange their facts into a straight line. This was before you. This was when I skipped class to protest the new war, already astonished by what information I would never know. For 4 years in elementary school, I delivered the same basic report on the humpback whale. I knew the numbers by heart. 39 to 52 feet, 79,000 pounds, 16,000 miles. I knew the taxonomy. For how else can a girl picture a monster men once thought was winged in foreign waters she will never touch? Within their own geography, the humpbacks will sing continuously for more than what we call a day. In these hours, Atlantic whales will sound differently than those of the Pacific. Elvis, Buddy, Otis were the names of the first men I ever loved. I'd call up the local radio, request a familiar song, and, knowing they were dead, the lyrics then jolted the thrill of a human something in a body that I've spent most of my life trying to feel. I've heard you're trying to keep your data close. One needs the marginalia, but your headline, sans serif, all caps. Come back to me, please, a little smaller. In Paris, on a spring evening, Jean-Paul Sartre wrote to Simone de Beauvoir, I wanted to bring you my conqueror's joy and lay it at your feet, as they did in the age of the Sun King. I wanted to bring you this, one whale divided by water from another, one song changed throughout time, never repeating. I wanted to lay at your feet the boys I kissed in the dark and whisper their Austins, Jessies, and Bradys into your ear to give you the clean comfort of history. This age, sir, could be named for you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Okay, next we have Keith Ekiss. Keith is a Jones Lecturer in Creative Writing at Stanford University and a former Wallace Stegner Fellow. These three have a lot of things in common, including the Bread Loaf Writers Conference fellowships, which were mentioned in the announcements previously. He has read from his Pima Road notebooks here at Albany before. These poems have been widely celebrated and were chosen by Marvin Bell for publication at New Issues Poetry and Prose. Keith has recently been working on translations, the first of 4 volumes of the Costa Rican writer Eunice Odio. Unice, okay. Thank you. Came out in 2013. And in 2013, Keith also was Bread Loaf Writers Conference Robert Frost Fellow. He's published poems in many journals, including Kenyon Review, Gulf Coast, New England Review, Modern Poetry and Translation, and his creative nonfiction has been anthologized in Permanent Vacation, Living and Working in Our National Parks. it's a great pleasure to introduce Keith Ekiss.
Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. You guys can hear me okay? All right, great. Thanks Catherine for organizing. And this is the first reading of the season?
It is.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome, great. I'm going to read tonight from a manuscript of poems that I'm working on. It's all about San Francisco and the Bay Area, our home, the place we love to live. And the first poem requires some knocking on wood because it's about the next big one. So if you have some wood next to you, I know, I'm sorry. It's just what we do as poets. We go to the bad places. We go there, and we go there right away. And that's where we stay. This is called The End, Berkeley Hayward Fault. When the next quake startles the cows, down falls the glass, up go the ashes. The superstitious will say, we deserved it. Hidden rivers burst toward the surface. The disco shakes like a waterbed. Strays forage behind once locked doors. Turn off the gas, turn off the stove. The meal is wasted. Helicopters confirm the burning. Guitars tune up. Tragedy needs a song. Miles away in the quiet, nests waver but hold inside the forest. There will be no end. For now, we're bent to the depths of it, the new death, because we should have seen it coming. Then we rise and search the cupboard for recipes. Sirens wail, but not for you. Someone else hauls away the debris. Where will you go? To your friends who collect guns or the ones who serve gin, getting lit before stumbling home to sweep up your share of the wreckage. Into the city. Off the train, up to Market, I discover a separate city of quarter films and hustlers, veterans who wear the clothes they're given, mothers who awake to find the safety pins missing, pierced into the lips of three-chord punks who can't tune. Dogs flash teeth like jewelry, histories written in brick and fracture, sculpted colonnades, statues of soldiers, streets minted with the names of robber barons, a dome rusted to the color of the dollar. Once the city shook and burned, now the citizens find themselves in ruins, pink facade of a hospital through mist, the sick with views of the ocean and bridge. This next poem is called Burial Fragments. Probably some of you know you can no longer be buried in San Francisco. You haven't been able to be buried in San Francisco for a long time. In the 1930s and 40s, they dug up all the old cemeteries, because this is who we are as a human people, right? Or who those people were anyway. They dug up all the old cemeteries, moved the bodies down to Colma, but because they wanted to be thrifty with what they did, they didn't want to waste all those old headstones. This is about what happened to some of the headstones. They ended up in Buena Vista Park, and you can still see them today in the Haight-Ashbury district. This is called Burial Fragments. There's no room for the dead in this small city, nearly an island, where we trade corpses for houses. You can die in San Francisco, but you can't keep the real estate. On a path toward the hospital, gutters were laid from headstones, names split from dates. The dead rest in pieces. I visit to read fragments, cursive of another century, spelling out a memory. Frances, loving mother. Many names I'll never find. They return to face the earth. This next one is one of a number of poems that I tend to write a lot of true story poems. Like something happened and I try to figure out how to get it into the shape of a poem. And this is a poem that takes two coincidences and kind of yokes them together. I've always liked to go for a walk in my neighborhood in San Francisco between the Castro district and Noe Valley. And there's this one amazing kind of mansion at the top of the hill with a view out over the entire city. And this is a poem about that house and the statue that's in front of it. It's called Fascist Statue. On a red eye, in turbulence, I soothed a woman's nerves, whose chatter revealed a cousin owned the mansion I'd walked past for years. Hilltop Vista, front yard so rare in San Francisco. I imagined wealth in decay beneath splintered shingles, ceilings stained by candle smoke, shelves of Thackeray and Trollope. Over a fountain that never held water, a bronze statue of a winged goddess releases a phalanx of birds. Who owned it? Patriarchs with gold mines, mad as Mercury. The statue arrived in better times, the woman said, a gift from that poor man, Mussolini. Which is true. I walked by, after writing the poem, I walked by probably last year, and there was a guy out front watering the lawn, and I said, where'd that statue come from? And he came from. He said, oh, a funny story about it. It was Mussolini. So I had confirmation there. Next couple poems are prose poems. I don't know if that will matter towards as you hear them. They look different on the page. They're just a block of text as opposed to working with the line and line break. And this one's called Blam Blam. At the corner market, one that sells cheap fuel, I heard a shot. Backfire or gunfire, it wasn't certain when the schizophrenic, a gas station loiterer, pointed a pistol finger at my eye, blam blam, and pulled the imaginary trigger. I didn't fall, didn't bleed, no one surrounded me. No gate opened, light shining through, no hands lifted me to heaven. Hold the coffin, I'm not dead. I'm an ordinary citizen, but there's a ricochet of think inside my pinball head. I like to stay in one place without moving. Let's review the tape again. No weapon was present. I want the end or the beginning, not the unknown middle, the place we're always in. Tremble House. When I walk the leafy alley, I don't remember where I lived. Can't find the door I once passed through, where Jeffrey roomed with his orange coffee mug and orange shirt, because someone he once loved orange. The walls were filled with nudes and abstract genitalia. I found myself the straight one, summer roommate in a spacious house where a bougainvillea erupted into a Mexican dress. I read Alice in Wonderland and grew smaller. Her advice? Enter a house listening arrived like a gift. Jeffrey kept quiet about love, a way of sharing privacies. When my girlfriend visited on weekends, we proceeded with caution, as if our sex might wake his memory of the dead. This one's about a friend of mine from high school, whose name was Wingrove, hence the funny name, explaining Wingrove. If I were gay, Wingrove said, walking past the rainbow flags, I could get laid here so fast. We hadn't seen each other since his brother died. In high school, Wingrove called him deviant. There was a sheik from Dubai who fell in love, who promised riches, limousines and champagne, last-minute flights to Rome. Then, suddenly, no one for the brother to touch. Fear of contagion, of who might talk. Think that's bad? Their father dies. Wingrove drops out to care for the one he hated so fiercely. And the shame he now wants to explain, how it became easier. As his brother grew lighter, this is all he can say, a gesture that even now guides the body. It became easier to lift him. This next one is about a photographer named Minor White who spent a lot of time in San Francisco. He taught it. I can never keep the art colleges in San Francisco straight, and some of them have changed their names. So I'll just say he taught photography at one of the art colleges in San Francisco, and he was noted for doing very abstract photographic portraits of landscapes. This one's called Lives I'll Never Live for Minor White. No one's fooled today by a handsome young man who distracts the camera from the scenery. Moonrise over coastal hills excuses the pose, a sailor on leave, rough jaw, the anchor tattoo. Nothing exists without skin. Contours of sandstone toned like a body, fissures in rock like lips, a male mouth. Close-ups reveal shape, not story. He couldn't tell us whose body he wanted, and framed it again and again, kneeling toward stone, lover over lover, catching how morning light pressed itself on water or revealed the wear of hands in an abandoned house. An open window, blurred hem of a coat, a man just disappearing. The great intent leaks through. God has lit the world on fire. Knowing he was dying, he turned the lens on himself. Spry mystic dressed in rags, dressed in leather. One last chance to play the biker, the hippie, the spirit of death. I'll read one more of the prose poems. This one's about a bar in The Hague called the Persianab Zamzam Club. That's the title. And it was run for years by this guy named Bruno, who was kind of the soup Nazi of bartenders. There was a certain protocol you had to follow. If you wanted to get served, you had to do a certain thing. And if you didn't do that, or he just didn't like the way you looked, he kicked you out. And you had to sit at the bar, you couldn't sit at the tables, whatever. So being the kind of person I am, I had to go and see if I could get away with not following protocol. And this is what happened. The Persianab Zamzam Club. There are rules I won't follow. Take a seat, bills on the bar, order a dry martini. Ladies receive napkins. Bruno might serve punks in spikes while suits get shown the door. He says the city's gone to hell. Women used to wear white gloves. Rubbing dust off a bottle. You can have a Budweiser, he clips. It's the worst beer brewed in America. The glasses are polished like soldiers, gleam like the eye of an earnest young man who once fought the Japanese. What Bruno wants now is for you to follow orders. He fought overseas, served his country. What have you ever done? And I'll read two more. Corey turned us toward the political a little bit, and so I'm going to read a couple of little political poems. And this is another one of my true story poems, something that you just probably couldn't do in today's political climate. You would get in trouble, but this actually happened to me. Target practice. A Sunday morning voice behind the door I'd just opened said she was selling the Socialist Review and asked if I wasn't ready, quote, to take up arms for the revolution. I offered $1, and the conversation turned to capitalism. She worked part-time, didn't vote, and spent her afternoon on the firing range taking practice shots at President Clinton. I'd never held a handgun, and she wanted me to learn. The workers were uniting, but I wanted coffee and the paper, no matter what my comrades said. I don't believe in revolution, but I often want to let the stranger in. And this one is called Training Exercise, Blue Angels. I'm just not a fan of the Blue Angels. And it's okay if you are. It totally is okay. But I just think accidents happen. Nothing is foolproof. I mean, nothing is. The Titanic theory, right? We shouldn't need any more proof. They should not be flying over our city. Something's going to happen. So, not a fan. Training Exercise, Blue Angels. And I'll make this my last one. Each flight cuts a perfect slice of sky. They dogfight, they strafe. Shock waves rattle my windows. Wings dip closer than a couple arguing over party invitations. She preferred a theme, I didn't. Cocktails muddled with persimmon. Friends decked out like flappers and gents. Warm autumn days, light wearing thin. Simulated bombardments frighten abuelitas shopping for grandchildren. We've never been, to my knowledge, in need of attack. Their precision means to threaten. The acrobatics owe a measure to dance. I said I didn't care about the party. I only wanted to sulk about my country. What's the true subject? The pilots say they're bombing Baghdad, leveling San Francisco to annihilate us. Flower children and hippie parks, pleasure boats waving flags along the bay.
Thank you so much, Keith. So this is a great night for new work. Thank you. All right. So I believe that Emilia Phillips and I have been trying for It's been months, maybe a year. Could be more than a year to get you here, and so I'm so happy to have you here, and through you we've brought Keith back, and we have Corey, and thank you so much for tonight. So Emilia Phillips' latest book, Signaletics. I've only been reading it for all these months, so it's brought you here. You can pronounce it for us again and again. All right. It's just a remarkable book, and I'm so pleased to have her here tonight. She is the recipient of fellowships to the Bread Loaf Writers Conference and U.S. Poets in Mexico. She has held the 2013-2014 Emerging Lectureship from Gettysburg College and serves as a staff member at Sewanee Writers Conference and as prose editor of 32 poems. I think I'm going to let her poetry speak for itself. It's really quite remarkable. Yes, esoteric and personal, and in all kinds of stylistic variation, just quite wonderful and creative. And she is at work, I'm happy to know, on a second book, which includes poems, essays, and hybrid essay poems. So we'll be looking forward to that. So then we should start speaking soon, about the months from now when you'll return. Yeah. All right. So here's Emilia Phillips.
Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I am so happy to finally be here. I've been sort of on a West Coast tour. I normally live in Richmond, Virginia, so I'm flying out tonight. I have a red eye, so this is a much better place to be and reading here. And I'm so thrilled to be reading with Keith and with Corey, and so thankful to Catherine for having me here. My new book manuscript is called Ground Speed. I can make the official announcement that it's been taken by my publisher in 2 weeks. I'm going to read. Thank you very much. I'm going to read from that manuscript and also the book Signaletics, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that means once we get there. But I thought I would start with the first poem in Ground Speed. You can tell I've been traveling. It's a little chewed up by zippers. Just bear with me. All right. So last year, I had to have a couple surgeries. I had melanoma on my cheek. And the first of these surgeries, I had to go to a plastic surgeon for that. And then I later was with an oncologist. But so it was the day of one of my surgeries. It was going to be an office surgery. And I grabbed a book out of my office. And I just happened to grab The Metamorphosis. And I didn't think about it when I took it to the plastic surgeons. And so I got there and I started reading it, and there were a lot of like Botox patients and other cosmetic surgery patients around. There was some smooth jazz playing, lots of flowers, and then CNN was on mute, which I also thought was a weird addition. And I just had all these things swirling together, and this poem came out of it, and it's called Reading Ovid at the Plastic Surgeons. And I will have to take some drinks of water. My voice gets pretty hoarse, so bear with me while I do that for the reading. This poem takes its epigraph from Bishop's In the Waiting Room. I scarcely dared to look to see what it was I was. Reading Ovid at the Plastic Surgeons. No one else with a book. The slick weeklies gossip amongst themselves on the side tables as the ticker rolls the Dow Jones down, down, down. Under a profile of the marathon bombers, the older, a boxer. Jove argues for the removal of a race of peoples that do not please him. What his past remedy calls for the surgeon's knife. He will take a hunk of my cheek. Cancer. And though I can't see mid-procedure, I imagine the sight as an apricot, bitten. This a survival mechanism. Romanticism. David says, if you're out in public and you don't want anyone to talk to you, bring a book of poetry. Even as I enter the confidence of the room, I avoid my reflection in the window. For there, most of all, I see myself as only I can, as only the I will have me, as light alone. So my first book, Signaletics, takes its title from a late 19th century of identification of criminals. It was developed by a Parisian police clerk. It involved 9 measurements of the human body. And I became interested in this. My father's a forensic scientist. He's a fingerprint expert. He was initially a cop, and then later he has been working as a contractor with the military and intelligence agencies. And so in a lot of ways, this book is really to him. He was gone for many long months at a time in the Middle East and elsewhere, and some of the things that he was doing, although I'm not sure really what he was doing, I didn't necessarily agree with, and I didn't agree with the war that was employing him. And so this book was really to him. So a lot of the poems are addressed to him or take on stories about him. So there's a sequence in this book called latent print, and that's just simply the term that they use for fingerprints that you leave anywhere you touch. When I was a young child, he became very concerned that I would be kidnapped. And he and my mother had just divorced, and it was around the time of the Walsh case, I think. And so he became very paranoid that I would be kidnapped. And so he decided to take my fingerprints and put them in the national database. And I recently applied to the FBI to get a copy of those because apparently they're on record there. So what a thing to have, yeah. So he gave me some other advice that appears in this poem. The poem also braids that narrative with a narrative about Thomas Ekiss, the Philadelphia photographer and painter, a self-portrait that he did, nude, holding a woman who was lying prone in his arms. It's called Latent Print. Besmearing upon the plate, gelatin cooked to harden with chrome allume, cooled, and then the layer of emulsion poured center and tilted to cover the surface entire. For 2 days, Ekiss frames the plates. The model by the window fingers the sash of her robe. Unnamed in the photo, she sprawls dead weight in his arms, nude, hard shadows beveling her curves. She appears helpless, with her fallen head, neck exposed. If you're ever kidnapped, bite the car door, my father said one Sunday after the divorce. Crown Vic en route to his office. Teeth marks. I can find you that way. Inside, he sat me down and held each of my fingers to an ink pad, smothering ridges in black, and then from left to right, prints he rolled on a white card. These are yours. They don't change. In his portrait carrying a woman, Ekiss too is naked, shoulders slung back. Behind him, an empty chair, 3 easels. Shuttered by a student, the camera sears image on dry plate. As I stare, the woman grows heavier and heavier in his arms. A lover maybe, paid girl. Never let go, he will never. I will find you. My father points to the scans on the IBM. Whirl, loop, whirl, whirl, whirl. As an adult, I later realized that if you're looking at dental impressions, it's probably not to find a live person, which made it all the more creepier. Thanks, Dad. So I said I was never going to write about my dad again. And then, I don't know if you have this problem, but every time I say I'm not going to do something, I end up doing it. So there is a new poem in the book manuscript that is about my father. And sometimes I like to read it before I give you any context about my dad's job, because the title is The Episode of Cops in Which My Father Appears. So you don't know which side he's on. Here it is. All right. I'm going to have to get another drink. I'm sorry. All right. The episode of Cops in which my father appears never aired. The suspect surrendered his life. No suicides on basic cable. No mortal wounds or use. Only pump action and hacked kilos. The call girl's doughy blurs. And the swing pixeled between a pantsless perp's scramble. Its reel quickened at the end credits to match footfall with the rhythm of bad boys, bad boys. Not my father, on the radio after the shots flash coil in the house of windows, or the bullhorn answered by silence, the hostage, the suspect's fiancé, and her scream too, like a hostage let loose as she returns from the bathroom, to find him astray, mouth open. Funny, she'd never seen his teeth, not all of them, not that he had all of them, capped in some cheap metal, his rat tail precious as a lock in a Bible. Or the women outside the chicken processing plant. No, we won't see them, waiting around for the blinking and winking meal bells of AM, PM, for the boys that like to make jokes about breasts and thighs. Some lose what little they have in the back seat after a sting. Wash your hands of this. My father leaning against the counter in my grandmother's kitchen with a Yogi Bear jelly jar of milk the color of his undershirt, almost as translucent. After listening to my bad day at school, drained the glass and said, "At least it wasn't a body stewing in a house for a week." At least it wasn't my tangent on that. The body's cat nibbling at its earlobe like a lover, like someone who would do whatever you wanted them to do, on the bench seat of the pickup, at gunpoint, in the rain or no rain there was to dapple and fog the lens. If only you had the right words instead of these negotiations, to open the door instead of kick it in. Well, let's see if I can find the poem I was looking for. I think I would know the order. I've been reading mostly new poems, so sometimes I get my head in this. Oh, here we go. All right. So I should have mentioned before I read that poem that I grew up in the town of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And that's where the setting of that last poem was. And there's the town has really come a long way. It used to be pretty run down, and lots of old mills that had been closed. But now it's like a really wonderful city. I love going back. They have all these galleries now and great restaurants, and they've cleaned up the whole city and everything. And it's really nothing like small southern city that I know of. So this one though may live up to some of your expectations for what a small southern city is like. My grandparents wanted me to go to a private school, but they didn't want to pay for a big private school, so they sent me to the cheapest private school in town, which ended up being a very conservative Christian high school. And I had a miserable time there. I was accused of witchcraft in the 9th grade. That happened. Yeah, I've never written about that. I gotta save it for my little talk between poems. But my best friend, the senior year of high school, she was in the process of coming out, and she couldn't do it at school because she would have been kicked out a few months to go. And at the same time, she started developing these benign tumors called teratomas. And the tumors develop other parts of the body like hair and teeth and organs. And, now it seems like such a perfect sort of lodestar to guide me in talking about this place. So this is called teratoma. A lump above her hip bone Em had me touch in the girls' bathroom as she lifted her uniform Oxford, size of an unripe peach, as hard. She mistook for a knot from a volleyball fall. The doctors gave her the jar to hold when she came out from under. 3 teeth, fully formed, a tuft of black hair, a lung peanut-sized that trembled like a yolk when she raised it to look. No one was to know. Her desk empty for a week. We began each Bible class with a prayer and nominated our requests as if for awards. I was silent. She was gone, and so we prayed for her. We prayed for all the absent. The girl who went missing for a month at the end near graduation. The word was mono. But once we ripped into summer, we saw her out with the baby, and he was beautiful, as secrets go. Touch here, my friend told me. Be easy. Over her right kidney, the teratoma hovered. She cried when I pressed it with my thumb. I made my first boyfriend fuck me through silk panties, as if this would keep me pure. But then I didn't care about being pure. I wanted to be nothing, to come out of my uniform, hip bones shrugging off the gray skirt. I wanted to rise through the collar like blue flame from a Bunsen burner, leave so that no one knew. My clothes holding the shape I gave them in the desk. They'll fall off, she said, when I looped my fingers with rubber bands until blood-starved, white. I was a stranger to myself. My one Hindu friend shoved her books to the floor when our world religion teacher said her many gods with their many arms would dissolve like salt. Here we lifted one another, our voices scalpel-edged. We began with a prayer, and there we ended it. I'm going to read just one more poem tonight. Thank you all for coming out here, and thank you again to Catherine and Corey and to Keith. I'm going to read a poem that there for a while it kind of cycled out of my reading rotation, but somebody mentioned it to me the other night, and so I've been thinking about it again. It's kind of one of those poems that you forget you wrote, and then you go back to it and you're like, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. It's called Diaspora. When the world goes pearly in the helio range with ash and element, and whatever was understood in corpus is suddenly forgotten, like the reason why I walked into this room. When there is no one, there will be a few, perhaps in a sleepy orbit. And when they finally lose communication, One will ask nothing over and over. Do you read? Do you read? Except this will not be the language he speaks in, though the language will be the same as it was before. One will cry, another laugh, and slam his brow against the indestructible window until he's bleeding, forehead split like the mango he once shook from a tree, until the sound that lives on between the panes becomes him, becomes the elegant slander of his life he hears or thinks he hears, eavesdropping in this way on the future. If one of you can point to this and say, this is untrue, then it is. When and if are old friends who write but never visit, a withdrawal from the senses, from a violent land. I can't remember why I'm standing on this threshold, everything before me a cloud beginning to scatter, while gravity looks through me, down my body and into my shoes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all three of you. It's a really wonderful evening, and you already have an invitation to return, please, all three of you together. All right, before we take a break, I have a couple of announcements. First of all, I wanted to mention that, oh my goodness, what have I done here? I'll mention that later. Okay. Let's see. Zoe, did you have an announcement you wanted to make?
Sure.
For, yeah.
Hi, I'm Zoe Francesca, and I just wanted to announce, since everyone here loves poetry and our writers, that the city of Albany has an unfilled poet laureate position that's been vacant for a number of months. It's not going to go away, it's just going to wait for the right person. The Poet Laureate of Albany has to be somebody who either lives or works in Albany currently. Excuse me? And who has lived or worked in Albany for at least, I think, a couple years. Also has to be active in the poetry community and publishing poems and doing other poetry activities. If you know someone or are interested, could also be someone who doesn't primarily write in English. You know, they're thinking of translating the flyers into other languages. So anyway, I just wanted to remind everyone that that's on the table, and it's the City Council Albany Arts Committee that's working on it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Albany really should have a poet laureate. We've had Christina Hutchins, who's sitting in the back right there, and we kind of think of her as our poet in residence for sure. So she's our, local poetry queen, and teaches a workshop here. It's the first Wednesday, correct? At 6:30 each month here. Okay, so Joyce Jenkins has an announcement. I love this, bringing more people up front.
I'll do this fast so that people can read and talk. But if you don't know about this, is that Tiffany? Hi! The Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, some people call it the Watershed Eco Poetry Festival, is happening on Saturday, September 27th. It's free, it's in Berkeley Civic Center Park, and it's a great day. We have two of the readers here with us tonight. Elliot Shane and Tiffany Higgins will both be reading on the Strawberry Creek Walk that starts at 10 and meets at Oxford and Center Streets. And then the main stage readings, and they'll also be returning to the main stage those readings are noon to 4:30. You know, in Civic Center Park, right behind City Hall, next to the Farmers Market, across the street from Berkeley High. And it's a great day. Kay Ryan, Ann Waldman, Dean Rader, Al Young, Randall Potts, a really hot jazz band. Really good, not lame, I promise you. And you'll have a really good time, and you can get a few vegetables at the farmer's market at the same time, so hope to see you there.
Okay, that sounds great. And so we're going to take a brief break. We've got lots of brownies back there. I want empty plates at the end of the evening, please. And then we'll return for open mic. And please also look at the books that are out for display and for sale from our readers. Thank you. All right, I think we're going to start our open mic here now. And I do want to let people know that our next month's readers are Alan Sadowski and let's see. Why am I losing his... I keep losing his last name.
What's his first name?
Robert. Sword. Robert Sword, who was the teacher and mentor of Alan Sadowski. So that's a nice pairing. And then in November, we're doing something really special on an unusual night. It will be a Friday night. I believe it's the 14th of November. Gerald Stern will be here. And Poetry Flash is going to co-present with us. So that's going to be pretty wonderful. Okay, so let's carry on with our open mic here. I've got Elliot Shane. And we can hear more from Elliot Shane by the creek on the campus at Watershed.
Right. Yeah, so Alan Sadowski was a teacher and mentor of mine, speaking of teachers and mentors. That's another story. This is a poem about Los Angeles and the materialistic culture there. And in it is a movie star, and you probably know him, Leonard Nimoy. You're old enough to know that. Okay, you're not. This is about Leonard Nimoy. He was this weird movie star with ears, and let's see, in and out of the this space. In and out of this space. Okay, Star Trek. My friend Adam was a movie star's son, so we'd party at his home. Not because his dad was there. He was often filming and far away, but the queer man lingered in the headshots over the balustrade and in the cream that came from a gold pitcher in the fridge. He was the lift and separate that let the mansion and our skin conjoin a hefty 2 feet off the body, like fresh boats docked just offshore with goods from other countries. I remember Belinda Himmelblau, halfway up the grand staircase, looking down as she called to me in that shrill barker's voice trained by afternoon TV. She wanted new kinds of love, or rather, simple proof that it was permissible for her body not to be a star. So she just hung there as we all went deeper into our fantasies, as we pushed earnestly into outer space, which was actually deeper and deeper water.
Thank you, Elliot. Sue Ellen. Nice to see you here.
So my name is Sue Ellen Pector. As I drift off to sleep, Mom has died. Trauma is the vertigo of shock. I am upside down and inside out. I keep losing, dropping, injuring myself. I bruise so easily now. I am one big owie waiting to scab over. Yet my inner gyroscope remains balanced. Mom taught me that I have an inner gyroscope. Oh, to revisit every dog who ever loved me. Years ago, from deepest sleep, I would feel Simcha dog leap onto the bed to sleep beside me. Now, in my dreams, 14 years after her life, Simcha still leaps onto my bed when I need her. Come to me now, Simcha. Tonight, drifting into slumber, I invite dogs from long ago who loved me. Penny, Hobbit, Cindy, Simcha, to leap onto the bed from every direction. Remind me that my job is to be here in this life with dogs and cats and trees. Fated this confusion, convertible into dreams which bless me with canine grounding. Is there time to read a poem that takes half a minute?
I'm trying to keep it to one poem per this time. I'm sorry, I should have announced that. I'm so sorry. I kind of instituted that a while back. I should say it every time. I'm so sorry it seems rude, but please bring your poems again for the next reading. And thank you. Dogs are on my mind tonight too. Audrey Sabol. Sabol, sorry. I never have to say your last name.
Hi, this is a brand new poem, short. When the world went flat, I'm not moving from this place where you enter me with your voice. The South African garden breaks the gape of the sun for which I lost my skin for a time, when the world went flat. We meet in Pangaea, facing Argentina, your thoughts sculpt along mine, an onomatopoeia. We speak in letters and think in line. You could hear the hipster in his voice, the jailbird. I recall a time of vulnerability. The hypnotic sunshades of wind in the garden pull me back to our laughter. I used to worry that we couldn't make it far enough before our continents divided, that my woe would shred the last strand of cassava vine that's known us together. You wondered too, but it's no longer a question with too complicated an answer.
Thank you, Judy Wells.
As well as being Otis Redding's birthday, it happens to be Tolstoy's 186th birthday. This is called Tolstoy in July. A near full moon illuminates the room. He's reading Anna Karenina. She's reading War and Peace. Passion rocks the room in their books. Theirs is on hold. She has a hip replacement and a screw in her elbow from a recent fall. He is her impatient, patient helper, suitor. Can they really live through books? Tolstoy believes they can. Otherwise, Why would he write 1,000-page novels whose characters cycle through ecstasy and depression in love, and sometimes simply boredom? She tries to be patient as she reads War and Peace. He tries to be patient as he reads Anna Karenina. She waits for her hip to heal. He waits for her hip to heal. Levin loves Kitty. Anna loves Vronsky. Prince Andrei loves Natasha. Everybody loves Natasha. The readers want to love each other. Instead, they read, and they read, and they read.
Yay, Judy. Thank you. And Dale Jensen.
Oh, premature, you haven't heard it yet. Okay, Pies in the Skies. This is not about Tolstoy at all. So your gut's in charge, and your car has the face of a broken prize fighter, and your last shoe gets its last toe out of the purple top story of your Victorian right hand. A cold consciousness the size of the entire horizon hands you a can of the newest industrial coffee. Oh, then, who is your deity, Charlie? You've been trying to escape this clatter for 40 years. Your cat keeps devouring your alarm clock. You see him strutting around the house with that great silly grin across his face. He's big now, too. He's been taking lion lessons. And your legs look like chicken legs to him. And you're looking for your travel guide. The sky is orange now. You're used to it. You get up every morning with it like that. And you keep wishing for Corinthian columns to hold it up. Columns made of maybe raspberry tarts. Or maybe cream pies are the forgotten souls of banana peels. Or maybe the sky isn't really orange. Maybe it's pumpkin. Slapstick comedians are gathering around your garage. They want their souls back. They need them to slip on or to fill pies with. The pies you dream of eating every morning in the orange dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Larry Crispin.
The events of this poem took place in this room. Sweet Brianna Grace. Sweet Brianna Grace writes amazing poetry Wednesday night. If you want to hear it, you must listen closely at the site. Is Brianna Grace a nom de plume? Listen closely from the start. You do not know how many words will tug directly at your heart. Many times I've asked her to read her poems on Tuesday night, to use the mic loud and clear, to show her spirit and her light. She signed up to read, then her name crossed out with so much overlapping. I called the Albany police. Was there a poetry kidnapping? To write amazing poetry as a young, shy, quiet teen, to find the perfect metaphor and word, this wonder is rarely seen. 10 times a month I read my poems. At only one will you see her face. In the class of the great Christina is sweet Brianna Grace. When she reads her masterpiece, you must strain your ears. I do not know why she is so quiet. Christina's protégés have no fears. Who can go back in time to write poetry from the start? To find the perfect teacher, recite the poems within your heart. I'll stay in the present time. Who as a teen can keep pace? And I want to hear the poetry of sweet Brianna Grace.
Thank you. Claude Convert. Claude Convert. Say okay?
Say okay.
Okay. And if you would like to announce your art.
Oh, you think so?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I will make an announcement. On the 20th of September, I have an art show opening, and it's the first time I will be showing in the East Bay, and it is with three other artists. It's abstract, and it is the first time I show a period of 14 years of work, and so I am very excited. But I'm also very excited it is that there will be a poetry reading at 7:30 in that same space, that very same day.
What space is that?
It is at the Folk and Fine Art Gallery on Solano Avenue, the backstage of the Oak Theatre, just across Andronico. It's a wonderful space. Yeah.
Say the date again?
The 20th. Yeah, Saturday, 5 to 8. So feel free to join and to read poetry, or listen to poetry, or listen to Dale. And
reading it.
yeah, I know, it is wonderful with his new book. Yeah, so, okay. Dandelions. The dandelions have turned to wind. The path of grazing cattle ripple the slopes. In the valley, the river meanders. Wandering the slanted fields of woods and I grew up in, I notice how certain things haven't changed, though I have. Am I missing my life by thinking that half of it wasn't lived by me? By wondering what the other half will be? I so looked for the right thought in others' mind that I forgot how I love to walk the earth in the company of God. I forgot that my dreams were mine to leave as flowers blossom and falter to become soil, air, streams, stars and whispers. I forgot that I have something to say, even if my voice croons in tongues and colors, even if I don't always remember what I think.
Thank you. Peter Thomas.
Great reading, by the way. Bite the door. The lady on TV is selling the benefits of discounted mattresses, but the sound is turned off, so I can only dream of how I might be dreaming on one of those discounted mattresses of hers. Her hair is too long, and to be honest, it's kind of withered like a flag someone forgot to bring in from the coastline. The TV with plentiful sports activity and commercials is on here at the Berkeley Slam, which just goes to show you what a series of non sequiturs life is composed of. And I say that from the position of feeling uncomposed in general and distraught in particular. Like I myself have been left out someplace too long, or just not heard the closing call with the proper degree of comprehension, whatever that might turn out to be. Anyhow, I just paid $1 over the minimum required Poetry Slam fee, like I'm a big shot who had a successful day selling discounted mattresses, which couldn't be further from the truth. I hadn't so much sold a Subway sandwich to a sailor, and my own mattress has so many depressions I start to look jovial by comparison. But at least I don't have to fret over being a victim of an overly long, withered head of hair since all of mine fell out in the 80s. A young man walks by me wearing a t-shirt celebrating engineering, not something you see every day, and for that I am immensely grateful, although I like my phone to work as much as the next guy. It's a college town, I suppose, which may explain a few things, a handful of which I wish a good-natured person would share with me. I'd even be up for a person of moderate to mixed nature. Slightly gloomy would still be all right. Do one thing or another with me anyway. I'm just sitting here in the same state of bewilderment you are. Oh shit, don't tell me you're clear or you're going to go clear or you're in the middle of a course guaranteed to deliver clarity. They are playing the Rolling Stones at the bar. She comes in colors everywhere. I was about 12 when that came out and you weren't born, but you look so familiar. Anyway, that lyric means a whole lot of different things to me now. I was still naive when it came to the various ejaculatory experiences possible in time and space. When you're out for the evening, there's always the question of what everyone else is doing there, since the evidence is kind of overwhelming that they too are out.
I believe all interviews should be conducted in such settings. Now a TV speed hitter, now on TV a speed hitter, whatever that is demonstrating how to, I guess, up the pace of your hitting ability. The possibilities for improvement are fast and furious, which is of course the name of an old movie in which I imagine cars were desperately trying to improve upon cars. The speed batter guy with a bat, a must-have piece of equipment for a speed batter, looks reassuringly all-American if that's how you take your reassurance. Kind of like The Bachelor on The Bachelor, only many years later, post several divorces, The Bachelor, being naturally motivated to have marriage improve upon marriage in a fast and furious winner-take-all dash to the finish. And I'm getting nervous, fearing that I will be reincarnated soon, a sufficient cause of nervousness since one must die before being reincarnated, and that the speed hitter guy will be my new dad, which you'll have to admit is entirely possible. Statistically speaking, where is the guy in the engineering t-shirt when you need to verify some statistical type information? Anyway, if that speed hatter man turns out to be my dad, I'll be way younger and tidying up my room like there's no tomorrow, which some people think there isn't going to be in any case. So I'm caught between old age and the possibly imminent arrival of babyhood, neither of which bequeaths me the permission to bestow my undying admiration on some of the scholarly beauty that inhabits this room, and which gives rise to an almost credible hope that the world will make it all the way to intellectual erotica just in the nick of time while I hover between incarnations.
Thank you, Peter. Jeff Kingman. Did we lose Jeff Kingman? We did. All right, Linda Ephros. Ephros?
Ephros.
Ephros, good.
I was debating which one, and after that woman left, I thought she... Okay, I think I'll go with this one. It was sort of in the same theme she was talking about. This is how I imagine it. Golden green seaweed cut... Sorry, start over again. Golden green seaweed, cups and ropes and useless tangles at the seashore like my insides. I have gone and buried another darling. In tender stride, you move toward me on the sand. The seagulls echo the eternal rhythm of the sea. Your strong hand on my most sorrowful spine eases me in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison McCabe? Yes. Okay.
Psychoanalysis sometimes. Sometimes she's like a playground, a jungle gym I can climb all over, swing my torso down over her bars without ever banging my head in the sunlit glee of letting go. I want to crawl up inside her, sniff her jacket and pee all over her. I turn the dining room chairs upside down, throw her blue blanket on top to play hide and seek, read The Count of Monte Cristo by flashlight, and shush any that open their mouths to speak. And when it turns and I grow feral, when the world is only black or white, I've got her wavering voice, her small foot on the stool, her steadfast faith in my and the world's unfolding.
Thank you. Okay, Tiffany Higgins, who will also be at Watershed.
Thanks for mentioning that, Catherine. Okay, Avernia is a kind of, it's another name for staghorn lichen, the Latin name. Hansel and Gretel in the Valley of Avernia. Tear vortex, tree superintendent, sun salve worship. It is something like this in the shallows I sip. Didn't Hansel, didn't Gretel follow crumbs to ridge? No, they didn't reach it, waylaid by, oh, the witch, who seduced with long canes in shape of jay, sweet roof. Wouldn't you, hungry, wouldn't you, too? Trivial trick, malodorous, sucker, suck, impulsive. A boy in a birdcage, she who is blind feeds tendons. Tends to him. Meanwhile, he taps on his lap and listens to the sky outside. Through the bars, she checks his distal phalange for volume of flesh, for juiciness. He pokes out instead another boy's bone, found on ground of cage. She says, well, we'll wait another day. Hasn't met third quarter projections. Who will pay? Meanwhile, Gretel, she has made a servant, some say slave. Gretel sweeps subliminal cobwebs, supply provisions, straw distress. Like any maid, Gretel watches more than is watched, attends the mere minute when, of course we cannot ignore the old hunch herself, is without pension or other support for a wonderful valley of candy, corn syrup, chocolate, sulfur. Finally, the great wisdom of the age gives a nudge. Dear Gretel, won't you see how hot it is, the fire? Straight of cease, flame straddle. Won't you lean just to feel? For I am ready to bake something, and in the kiln must rise the leaven. The girl bears across the gape mouth of the oven. Somewhere a blackbird sings its pie, and a bluebird claws its cake. The lass pivots, legs, arms, cross of an X, and she tips her elder in. Someone will sing a song about saving, but they will be wrong. There is nothing here but forest, nothing here a forest doesn't tell. How oaks hoist lines of Auvergne, strophes of staghorn lichen. The siblings follow the path back, silent through the wood. They hope upon return someone will be there to receive them. Only the rock, starred with lichen, hums.
Thank you. Rob Lipton.
So, a friend of mine, poetry buddy W.C. Waldrop, took one of my poems and screwed around with it. So I'm going to read, there are two versions on the same page, and so that's what I'm going to read. Death Nice-like. The legs are covered in black stretch cotton stovepipes. Her blouse red satin flows away from her, and there is her voice, smooth and hushed, a stage. From her snakeskin cowboy boots to her thighs, like smoke released at a poisonous burning. She pulls like decorative pillows, a place for the damned to whisper. A winking sigh. Beautiful syllables pile up, her poems from a wicker envelope. Smiles with translucent teeth rest their heads. And the legs are covered in black stretched cotton. This from the snakeskin cowboy boots to her thighs, stovepipes. Her blouse, red satin, flows away from her like smoke released in a poisonous burning. She pulls her poems from a wicker envelope, smiles with translucent teeth, and there is her voice, smooth and hushed, a stage whisper, a winking sigh. Beautiful syllables pile up like decorative pillows, a place for the damned to rest their heads.
Thank you, Rob. Christina Hutchins.
Thank you guys. That was a great reading. And Catherine. Last weekend I took my 9-year-old niece and my 4-year-old nephew to the LA County Fair, which is more like Legoland than a county fair. And it reminded me of this poem, which is an older poem. But I guess I was struck by the contrast. I grew up in the Santa Clara Valley, and our county fair, it was still an agricultural place. It was 40,000 people in the county. And, it had jams and quilts, and there were ribbons on things. And in the stock parts, there were cows and pigs, and they were being washed with milk or vinegar. And I always had crushes on the cowgirls. So anyway, that all reminded me of this poem, which is older, and that's all I'll say. It's called Grotesque. Better than any ride, pushing through the turnstile, and underfoot the sidewalk simply ending, we walked on dust. Armature extending into the night, the great black distances drew close, a practical and starless fabric, pieced between the delicate machines of human pleasures. Tossed baseballs and beanbags, popcorn and polished brass, goldfish, pennies, corn dogs on wooden sticks in the leather coin aprons. Stepping into the night carnival, every artifice reeling holier than by day. The shuffled ground waltzing a milling, revolving, best dressed and rumpled humanity. We're held. A chalice of the lit night being lifted. Small white bulbs strung along every rim. A shadow for every crevice. A strong forearm bared and turning a radius of light. A woman's fingers ceaselessly twirl the paper cone. Spun sugar like flyaway hair expertly twisted and caught it by wind into a high pink chignon, then handed away. This poem is a decoy. Hell, the whole book is nothing but painted ducks. No carnival. I'm sorry. But tell me, have you ever grasped, then lifted 2 corners of a worn bedspread with your brother, the hunter? At the far corners, 3 dozen or so decoys, underbellies, green eyes, butts and bills a tumble between you, edged through the doorway and backwards down the stair, leaving the kitchen light, breathing chill scents of dawn. The brother complaining, though you're the one doing the favor and walking backwards besides. Well, I have, and I am. The Ferris wheel paused, with us swinging the edge of the world. Each duck, every intricate hand-painted surface, wants to be noticed from every direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor.
This is Untitled. How all these ancient words now vaguely prance around some central thing to which words merely point. To know it means to enter in, give over, and be taken in. Submit, rest in abeyance, rest equally in lapis lazuli and faience, and find beneath electrum gold and rays of sun long stalks in golden hands, and the blue-eyed Nile. For Horus cohorts know what lay beyond the flanking sands, and worshipped that. And when they found the seasons rise and fall will ever flow, the palms spread wide their fronds over Egypt with dates of double sweetness. And the hierophants within the holiest of holies know whatever Ka remains to float the evening flood beneath, however weighs the heart, the true and great and ever absent, ever here, departed long ago, but even now lays smiling on the Nile and beatific from the silent zenith of the pyramids. We have come to Egypt to discover absence and be gone, be folded into paradox of dawn beyond the yawning sands, shine brightest gold and deepest lapis lazuli, while ever wending to the sea, the fecund travel tranquil sea.
Thank you so much, everybody, and I hope to see you second Tuesday in November. You too. Yes, thank you especially to our 3 readers tonight. Yeah.